Hang on in there, baby. It's very nearly 1:15. So, do you have an obsession? Perhaps it's somebody in your life. Maybe you're married to someone with an obsession. Well, what happens when one man's obsession with the BBC threatens the future of his marriage? That's the question asked in a Brighton Fringe comedy show, The Complete History of the BBC, Abridged. Alex Kavanagh is the writer and she performs in the show as well, and she joins me in the studio. Gosh, how long is the show? The Complete History of the BBC?
Well, it's actually just 60 minutes.
Wow, you've done well fitting all that lot in.
90 years of broadcasting history to get in, absolutely. So we are perhaps a little bit selective about what manages to make it in there, but hopefully we cover most people's favourites.
Yeah, you say cover most people's favourites. Obviously, there's been some fantastic moments of broadcasting during the BBC's reign, but there have been some controversial times as well. Do you cover that in the play? I mean, Jimmy Savile, more recently, Saxgate, all of that?
Absolutely. Well, we do. We touch on it and then we move away. It's acknowledged and then we move on because, we couldn't get away with not mentioning it, but it's not really a subject for comedy.
No, not a great vehicle for humour, absolutely. Now, the play itself is about a man who builds a museum to the BBC in his garden. Tell me you don't know anyone who's actually done that in real life.
Not quite in their garden.
Okay.
But, I think it's a very British thing, having, an obsession and collecting and displaying what you have. But we were actually inspired to do the show by visiting a couple who run a museum as a sort of part-time passion. And it's very good and it's very quirky and eccentric. And we had a lovely time chatting with them.
And is their museum about the BBC?
No, it's more generally about science fiction.
Oh, okay.
And it was a lovely, lovely museum. But then I'd wanted to write about the BBC for a little while. And I thought about, if we took that idea and then twisted it so the museum actually wasn't very good, what happens then?
So what does happen? All that ruin the play?
Well, Terence, who's obsessed by the BBC, he's convinced that one day the BBC are going to turn up and realise what a treasure they have in him and, I don't know, make him Director General or something.
Stranger things have happened.
Absolutely. And so he every weekend he gets his poor long-suffering wife Ingrid to come down to the shed and rehearse his presentation to nobody. And then one weekend they get a whole lot of visitors.
Oh.
And they have to do the presentation for real. And it's what happens when suddenly it's put in front of an audience. So as well as telling the story of the BBC, you get to find out a little bit about Terence and Ingrid and their marriage and how things have been going.
Do you have any obsessions?
I do, yes.
What are you obsessed with?
Well, I'm a big Doctor Who fan.
Okay.
Huge Doctor Who fan.
Is that where your love of the BBC comes from?
I think it's certainly part of it. I mean, I grew up, watching the BBC, all the kids' TV shows, and I adore the BBC. I can't lie. I think it's worth every penny as a licence fee.
Right answer.
Oh yes. I pay the licence fee for Doctor Who alone, but you think about all the documentaries and music and dramas. Eurovision, that's in there. That's in there very topically. I do. I just grew up with it, and it's the automatic choice. If there's a national event like the Royal Wedding, we watch it on the BBC, wouldn't go anywhere else.
You mentioned value for money. That's one question actually I'm asking today. Do you think Eurovision is value for money? Did you watch it on Saturday night?
I was actually performing.
Oh, of course. So you missed it.
Yeah, I completely missed it. I do sometimes watch it.
I would suggest watching it on catch up. We were late getting in, so we watched it on catch up, and actually I think it's the best way.
Is it really?
Because you can fast forward. You can just watch the bits you want to watch rather than sitting, because it goes on.
It does.
It's hours and hours and hours of fine singing. But yes, no, apparently it cost the BBC £300,000. Which I don't think is that bad when you consider that it cost that to make 2 episodes of EastEnders.
Do you know what? I'm actually surprised that it is that good value for money. I think that's brilliant.
Well, I don't know if everyone's going to agree with this, Alex, but that's what the phone lines are open for. You can get in touch. The number 03459 570057. So if people want to come and see this play, The Complete History of the BBC, Abridged, where and when?
Well, we're on at the Jukebox Theatre, that's Jukebox with a D, on Waterloo Street at the Iron Duke Pub. We're on tonight, it's actually our last night at 6:45pm, and there's lots of tickets available both on the door and on the Jukebox website.
Fantastic. And it's a good laugh, so do try and get along to that if you can. So tickets by going to the website, or you can just turn up and buy them
on the door.
Fabulous. Thanks so much for coming in, Alex. I appreciate it.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Alison.
Alex Kavanagh, and that play, The Complete History of the BBC, Abridged, tonight, 6:45 at the Jukebox Theatre, Waterloo Street in Hove. Don't forget, if you're organising an event locally, let me know about it and I can tell everyone else. The email, alison with 2 L's, .ferns@bbc.co.uk.